Taylor's like that. Taylor Thompson's like, do not change it. Nice. And I was like, oh, I have to learn something. All right. Bobby, you ready to rock and roll?
Yes.
Teach us your ways, Bobby.
Yeah, so actually he was out here and he taught us a few things about flipping, Bobby flips homes. We actually put the link for you.
Oh.
And Bobby, I brought a friend. I don't know if you.
No, we're done. That's not me.
Yeah, you met him at family reunion.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, oh, okay. So everybody was like chiming in on social media and I'm like, yeah, he's coming out, so.
Cool.
Share your knowledge.
Thank you for having me, yeah. This is the clicker and scooting around. It's been a while.
It's fun.
Cool.
Yeah, look at the kids.
All right, guys, some of you know me,
The kids
some
are
of you may not,
cute.
but here's my two little guys went to Hawaii about a month ago. And thankfully, my amazing team, I was able to actually relax on vacation this time. Versus normally, I'm stressing out and consistently putting out fire, so. Anyway, Sam put this presentation together with all the fun little stuff, so there's a few pictures that'll maybe get some laughs out of it. So anyways, our topic today, I do a lot of flips, but also have a decent rental portfolio. So I've done presentations here where I've talked about finding properties, how to do flips, various things of that nature. We're gonna talk a little bit about that, but specifically more so building wealth today and kind of growing the rental portfolio. And I know that sounds much more challenging in today's market, right? You have interest rates, and cash flow is tough. So I'm really kind of diving into some creative ways on how to structure deals, maybe have some conversations and just different ways of thinking as maybe you're talking to your clients or looking at properties for yourself. So just trying to add some value and bring you guys some different ideas on adding to the rental portfolio. So a little more about me. My wife, Afton, and I, we do have a team here, been at this office for 7 years or something like that now. I met Afton here with two amazing little boys. And
That's a little important. You just make-
yeah, no, there's been a lot of love stories here. Taylor and Letty met here, Carmen, SP, and then myself and Afton. There was about 3 marriages within like 12 months. That we
Really?
met in this office, so you never know if you're
Don't drink too much.
the younger ones here finding some love here.
John and I met here, we're not married to.
Yeah.
That's
Domestic partnership, anyways, I've flipped a good amount of homes. I've been flipping for about 7 or 8 years. Again, Afton and I have a team here and, over the years, I've been adding quite a few rentals to the portfolio. Currently added another 14-unit property to accumulate 50 units in the rental portfolio. And I did start with a broker who had 3 tiers of his business flipping, owning rentals and real estate. I really kind of learned from some different people and along the way just have been continuing to add properties into the portfolio. And again, properties that I bought 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, obviously those are good interest rates, right? So kind of diving into some stuff on how to structure some deals a little differently and how I've still acquired, call it almost about 30 units in the past 1.5 to 2 years since rates have gone up.
Hey, Bobby, how old are you?
I'm 36.
36 years old, and you have how many properties?
Hey, bro.
Properties like 20-ish or 60.
Wow. Congratulations.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and I've learned a lot from a lot of different people. I've gotten in rooms with smarter people than myself, and
I think that's important what you just said right there.
yeah, I've learned a ton from this office, and Monty Soul is here. I have a big rental portfolio I used to connect with. Soares, I've always been picking his brain. So obviously, there's a lot of resources that I've learned from over the years, and I've taken a lot of risks. So we're kind of going into all this stuff. And what have I discovered? Flipping sales is more of a job. Most of the wealth that I've accumulated is from the rentals that we've acquired and seeing appreciation or forced appreciation by adding value to them by fixing them up. Gary Keller has always said this: we have the first opportunity to buy these properties, right? Like we talk to these clients, we have talked to sellers, we see various opportunities, and for the longest time myself, like I'd always bring them to somebody else to buy, right? And I've kind of had a mindset shift of obviously one, acquiring properties for myself for a number of benefits, and then 2 for flipping. So just something to keep in mind there. I got 20-ish minutes, so I'll probably speak through.
No, we have more time than that.
A little quicker. Then you guys can stop
We
and
have
ask
40
questions
minutes.
whenever you guys would like. So what we're gonna cover today, purchasing with the BRRRR method, which is buy, rehab, rent, refi, and Pete, anyways, who has your own rental properties? There's great things about it and there's rough things about it, right? So occasionally, not occasionally, but the ones that I have been able to buy, I call it somewhat of a discount. And then rehab it, done the burr method, right? I was able to fix the plumbing, fix the electrical issues, fix some of these issues that come up that Dex is well aware of, being a property management, that you get a lot of calls for plumbing issues and electrical issues, and toilets not working, stuff like that. So the properties that we did utilize, like the burr strategy where we fix stuff up, one of the big key points is that you're able to have some money to fix them up, and then you're gonna get less calls and headaches down the line. We're gonna talk about analyzing properties for ROIs. Again, we're gonna talk about, creative financing, subject to properties, seller financing, and creative. How many of you had some conversations about creative financing the past 12 to 18 months, 2 years? So we'll kind of dive into some more of those and some resources to check out. Stan did a great job again of throwing some fun little jigs in here. Again, took a lot of risks, and I think a big thing, again, you hear like the number of units or whatnot, but a lot of this, like, you don't succeed alone, right? I partnered with people, I did partner with my wife. I partnered with, borrowed money from parents, I borrowed money from friends that had it in their retirement accounts, from IRAs, from all these different things. So, when we're analyzing things and looking at it, like, how can we, maybe take a couple things from here today, maybe look into it, dive into it a little more and partner with people at the end of the day. I know Tomas and John, just worked with them. They partnered on a deal where they got a self-directed IRA, which is a retirement account, which I chatted a little bit about here too, but it's like working together, right? It's challenging to acquire properties the traditional way of putting 20 to 25% down right now. So we'll go into that. Again, leveraged hard money, line of credits. I've maxed out tons of credit cards. I've done a lot of 1031 exchanges. So we'll talk about a couple of scenarios that we did recently that were pretty creative. And I only, bring some of this stuff up just again for you guys to look at things and think a little differently when we're analyzing properties, either for yourself or for potential clients. I'm dancing a lot, random stuff.
Marketing the property, baby.
This is a good one. I was walking for dollars, driving for dollars with my kids and afterwards. Recording me walking around, and this is what it says. Favorite little videos that she sends around our team a lot. So, anyways, a lot of us know this, right? But we're gonna dive into it because cash flow is dead, right? And Brian and I have had some good conversations just about cash flow not being the end all be all, right? Tomas and Lansing and I, we've gone to lunch and stuff. It's like there's more benefits to owning real estate than cash flow, which is really what we need to convey to clients these days, right? Because otherwise, it's like a top question, right? Otherwise, you're gonna get tire kickers. Like I for the longest time, I would consistently talk to potential investors, but right off the bat, like if they're looking for cash flows today, like it's probably not even worth your time unless they're pretty much paying 100% cash and 50% down, where it's like, that's not what it's about these days. And eventually you own something today in 3 to 5 years, it's gonna likely cash flow and appreciate and have all those benefits, but you can't look and analyze it in today's math equation. It's gotta be down the line. So for me, again, I'm still buying some properties and I kind of go off appreciation. Again, creating wealth is one of the most important pieces that I'm evaluating. Depreciation and tax benefits. I'm going to talk a little bit more about cost segregation analysis. And I broke it down, so I've referenced it before, but there's a pretty good definition in here, analyzing it, and how I, not last year, the year before last, I paid 0 in taxes to the federal government. You still pay state taxes, but I paid 0. And just like you hear some of these other bigger entrepreneurs, it's because buying rentals and accelerating the depreciation allowed me to not write a check to the IRS. I will do one for last year, but then this year I acquired another property that'll hopefully offset a bunch of stuff. And principal payment, again, analyzing some of these different things, we'll break them down in more detail. So as we all know, appreciation. I guess I saw Ryan Lundquist's graph the other day. It's still going up. It's went up 3% May over May. You guys kind of look at some of his stats the other day. So, the market's slow, as we've all seen, and it probably got a little slower in June, but still appreciated 3% in like a bad market. In theory, rates go down, we'll jump back up, but historically, 3% is kind of been your average. So I just had a little scenario here of 500,000, 3%, like 15,000 appreciation. Some of the stuff, I'll kind of get into more fundamental stuff of why you kind of analyze all this into a ratio of like your return on investment, again, isn't just what goes in your pocket, it's that invisible bank account. Your principal reduction, return on investment, right? Every one of these properties, this is kind of a generic scenario, but some of the properties I own, $200, $300, $400 is going in the principal pay down that the tenant's paying at the end of the year. You're talking about $4,000 to $5,000 just on principal pay down. Plus you have that appreciation that's going up 3%. So just adding those two numbers up, and again, telling your clients about some of this stuff and how to analyze these properties a little differently. So I'm going to talk about a couple of scenarios that I purchased recently of how it's not necessarily about cash flow, right? Rich and I bought a property. It was a sub-2 deal. And subject to is basically assuming the financing that someone else had, where they stay on the mortgage, but we went on title. We had a minimal down payment, $10,000. We cash flow, call it 100, 150 bucks. But I know the line's going through here, but at 3% annual appreciation, right? This was $8,000. This property was $270,000. It's in the Yuba area. $8,000 a year is what it's appreciating, right? Your principal pay down on that particular deal was $350 a month at $4,200 a year. It's $12,200, right? We had a down payment of $10,000. So this is kind of the subject to financing deals, and I'm going to break it down a little more. How you guys can find some of these deals, groups to connect with, and in some cases, we have some opportunities that we're selling for these. Again, so these scenarios just giving you context on how to potentially leverage. Maybe you have a primary residence. I know Michelle and I talked about that she's got some equity, and I'm like, what can you do with it type thing? Well, I convinced my wife to HELOC our house, pull out a lot of money, and find apartment complex, right? So just wanted to kind of analyze how you kind of break this down, right? It was an expensive property, but essentially we did a home equity line of credit, and we're still borrowing that money at 9% interest, right? It's a lot, but kind of what you could call this is like the velocity of money. We did a cash out refi and a HELOC. So we borrowed the money at basically 10%, 9%, and it was 1.7 million was the purchase price. Not cheap. I know this is a unique example, but just kind of giving you an idea of how you can borrow money on your property and buy something cheaper. This was just my example. So the HELOC, so a couple of things, 3% annual appreciation will be $50,000 a year, right? I borrowed money from my home equity line, and it was at the time, it was like 3%. That was cool. Now it's at 9%, right? So we're paying like $31,000 a year. Okay. So if it's appreciating about $50,000 a year, and obviously you have options to force appreciation by improving units or raising rents, various things like that. So just in general, 3% a year, right? 50,000. Principal pay down on it is about $1,800 a month, which is nice in this scenario. Obviously, different math for different values that you're borrowing money at. So $21,000 would be a principal pay down. $50,000 would be the appreciation. So gross money going into this invisible pocket that I don't currently have, which is like long-term wealth, right? Is $71,600 in the gross return. So it's 71,000 minus the 31,000, right? That we're borrowing money from the HELOC is basically a $40,000, again, invisible return of money that I didn't actually have in my pocket. And this is what you call like the velocity of money. Borrowing money from other assets or partnering with somebody else, right? This isn't the easiest scenario to put together, but at the end of the day, I didn't actually put any money that was in my pocket down on this property. And there's, different scenarios on how to use something like this to your advantage, but it's just kind of a different way of thinking, right? I think sometimes like we don't want to tap into that equity in our home because maybe we don't know what to do with it, or it sounds like a high dollar amount. But at the end of the day, if properties are appreciating in California, which most of us are pretty confident that's going to continue to happen, 3% is a low appreciation amount in California. For the most part, we were at 6 and 10 and 12 and 15 and 20%, right? So obviously these numbers would be, inflated even more so, but going off of basic appreciation math equation here. Additionally, going into, I will break down this cost segregation analysis. You could do them on single family, small multifamily. In this scenario, I was able to do a bonus depreciation, and get like a $400,000 write-off. Kind of crazy. That's how I was able to eliminate taxes. 22, right? Last year's 23 and 2020. Any questions on some scenarios, and I'll scoot over to kind of break down cost segregation analysis a little more. But you could do these scenarios in smaller properties. The cost segregation analysis, essentially it costs some money for a firm to come together and determine how you're going to accelerate the depreciation on a property, and then you can get a bigger write-off in the first 5 years.
Bobby, who handles your portfolio? Do you guys do it or do you have?
For management,
Yeah, I mean, that's
I have a couple management companies.
right, so you don't do it,
Couple.
because I just believe it.
Yeah, I have some properties in like the Yuba Marysville area, and then those from around Sacramento region. So another scenario, again, these are just creative ways to kind of think about things, right? Purchase a property in Olivehurst, maybe some of you guys have seen it online, it's pretty much. Purchased the property for $600,000. We have the seller carry the note for $450,000, right? They carried it in second position. We got a hard money loan in first position. Literally was able to buy this property, again, with little to no money down. You're able to do more creative financing with sellers, right? They carried the note at 5% at an interest-only payment for $1,600 a month roughly. And I worked it out, there's no payment for 6 months. Additionally, I bought the property on like a 1031 exchange. So I sold another property that I owned and rolled that money into this one in order to use that money for repairs and rehab, right? So something super complex to an extent, but it's just, again, like another way of thinking and talking with sellers that there's a lot of opportunities and options out there. And in some cases like this guy, for example, he inherited the property. He didn't necessarily want to pay the taxes on it, right? Because if he would have been paid out his full 600, he would have been paying 25-30% to the IRS. So he was open to taking the payments in monthly installments. Property does need a lot of work. This is another scenario where we'll do the cost segregation analysis. You improve the property, you then refinance the property, you could pull money out, and there's no taxes on doing a cash out refi on that money that comes back in your pocket. So
Hello,
creative ways of thinking and just understanding that.
hello.
Do you have a question?
What up? A lot of different ways that you can kind of, manipulate real estate and getting low down payments. You can have tax benefits and various things. So what is the cost segregation analysis? And I can give you guys the company that I use, but basically the purpose is tax planning strategy, right? They're reclassifying components of the property to accelerate the depreciation. So, most things are on a scheduled depreciation of 27 years when you purchase a property. If you don't do anything in your property, they just depreciate it over 27 years. But if you do it in an accelerated breakdown, they will look at your floors, your paint, dry rot, they'll look at a lot of these different things, and they will push it over like a 5 or 7 year period. Okay, so if your floors, paint, kitchen, all those things, they kind of value that. Those, the life expectancy is maybe 7 years of those items. So they will accelerate it, and then you'll be able to get more tax savings right off the bat. I know there's different breakdowns of how you write things off, and, my mom, for example, and other people, right, sometimes you just write stuff off, right? In theory, you put floors in, you just write it off. Technically, you're not supposed to do that, right? You're supposed to schedule it out with your CPA. And I know, if you've got 1 or 2 properties, probably not a big deal. But in theory, you're supposed to report it to your CPA, and then they kind of, you put your 3,000 or 4,000 floors, and you get those benefits over 27 years. So if you do like some significant rehabs at times, then it could be valuable to do one of these analysis, and or if you have a property, call it more than 2 units, you'll definitely see some benefits from one of these.
There's a question on Zoom. Melissa, want to ask your question? She has her hand up.
No, that was my hand up for for something else a long time ago.
Okay. You can put it down.
Cool. So again, talking about current market restrictions, interest rates are high, there's no cash flow. Is it risky? At the end of the day, it's like, what are you gonna invest in? Some people have cash, they're just sitting on the sidelines, but they don't want to do something. So I think again, like going through this, having some different ways to think about how you can acquire properties. And again, with opportunities like this, there's less competition. Right, there's less people maybe willing to take some risk. There's less people maybe talking to some of these sellers because they don't know how to make a deal work. So having some different lingo and verbiage on how to be a little more creative can be helpful. So probably right now, right, as I've experienced, a lot of sellers are open to doing some creative options. You can grab some deals for less money down. You can assume current mortgages. Sellers are open to carry notes, and they've always kind of been. We'll give you some resources on how to kind of dive into and learn a little more about that. Real estate's still gonna be one of the greatest investments. If you appreciate the asset, California. So.
Quick question about it. So when you're using a accelerated depreciation, are you then, are you want to get rid of that property in 6 years? Or
No, I didn't do it on that one because I didn't know about it then. I did miss out on a lot of tax benefits when I was younger, when I acquired that, because that was one that was pretty distressed. I put like almost $100,000 into it. We'll talk more about the burn method and how to borrow that money. But I never utilized the tax benefits. So I missed out on some pretty good tax savings, 4 or 5 years ago. But really, that property was in Oak Park. I bought it. I was going to split the lot and sell it and flip it. I ended up keeping it. I Airbnb one side. It was right by UC Davis, like 3 blocks from it. And then the other one, I just had a long-term tenant, and it was appreciating. All of California has a crazy amount, doubled in value. But I never made any money. Right, but again, it was like, it just kept appreciating, right? I had this, at one point, a $500,000 asset that climbed up to like 800,000 just because of holding it over time. And then I was able to move it over to a bigger property. So now, I do have a lot of these duplexes, triplexes, whatever. And over time, you get some equity, and it's like, what do you want to do? It's tough because there's low interest rates on them. But then if you find some opportunities like this, where you're gonna be able to force appreciation by improving a property, then you're more willing to roll that money over. And again, a lot of this is it's creating wealth and assets appreciating and principal pay down. I don't cash flow a ton on my properties. Like I make money a bit, but it's nothing like I'm gonna go retire and out of all. So we're gonna talk about some different creative financing, seller financing. Really, again, just structuring a deal with the seller to have them hold a note. And any mortgage company will write up promissory notes. I used to have a promissory note that I got from a hard money lender in a different resource, and really the mortgage companies do it. So I wanted to overcomplicate it by providing documents, and maybe that's something you talk with your escrow company first, where you don't need. You want to have make sure that they're willing to put some of those documents together to help you, because I think it can just kind of reduce some liability of you creating documents and then signing it. Green on terms, green on interest rates, lower upfront costs, like, again, like that property was 600,000, I guess we put 20% down with the hard money, covered it on the one scenario, but a lot of times, like, the one Rich and I bought, like, had very little down. We have two properties right now that we're talking with sellers, where they just wanna walk away, like, they, those aren't necessarily seller financing, subject to financing, but you can get pretty creative. And I guess the thing on seller financing, the big one, is that we've been talking with some sellers about it, but you can maybe give them more than what they're asking for, right? If they want 400,000 and it's not worth 400,000, you can give them that price, or maybe give them a little more, but get creative terms, right? Maybe you have very little money down or zero money down. Some people are fixated just on that sales price. Then maybe you could structure a financing deal where, I've done this about a year ago, where it was 0% the first year, 1% the second year, 2% the third year, 4% the fourth year, something like that, where it's tiered, and then you have a balloon payment and a balloon payment just means maybe at year 5 or 7 that the whole note's due. But be able to structure it differently, because if you have a traditional mortgage, it's all interest payments up front, right? 90% of your mortgage is interest. And then over time, like, it kind of tears off, but if you're able to structure something with the seller and you do just principal pay down at first and maybe give them a little more, again, why would someone want to do this? Because maybe they don't, one, maybe the property's not selling. Two, they don't want to pay the taxes, right? It was a $300,000-$400,000 asset, and they're paying 20-30% right off the bat for capital gains. This could be, that's kind of within that conversation, like, you're taking money over time, it's kind of like an annuity for them. For a lot of older people that are selling, it could be again, like an annuity, like, where's their money gonna go in a bank, or they're, just an easy way to get payments over time. Any questions on, like, seller financing? So subject to finance, kind of a big thing that's getting tossed around, and it has been for a few years now. Really good resource is Pace Morby. This guy's like the godfather of creative financing, subject to financing. So he's got a lot of big on Instagram, big on YouTube. He has a whole community, and even on Facebook, if you go to, like, subject to Sacramento or something like that, there's deals from all over the country, like that are like low down payments of basically assuming other people's mortgages. And what it means is you're basically agreeing to transfer title, and you go on title, but they stay on the mortgage, right? So there is some things to be aware of. There is something called a due on sale clause. In theory, if the mortgage company wasn't comfortable with it, because you're not fully getting the okay from the mortgage company, right? That is kind of the risk. But for the mortgage company, they just want to get paid, right? They don't want to foreclose on a property. If you're making payments, they're not really messing with you. So talking about, benefits, you can acquire without jumping through the hoops of getting financing. You can put little money down. You can have a better interest rate. A number of different benefits, especially if they, refi before 2022. Con, seller stays on mortgage, you go on title. It can be a little messy, but you're able to acquire a property for the money down. I've been seeing it a lot lately, where sellers do reach out to us looking for a cash offer, but they don't have the equity, one, for us to make something work, two, sometimes, real estate commissions or things like that. So what are your options, right? People are willing to pay a little more in some cases if they don't have to do all the messy financing, and you're still getting some scenarios where they don't have equity, where maybe you're at a 5 or 5.5% interest rate, which is still a little less than 7%. Any questions on, like, subject to financing? So the reason one that we did, there's a couple ways that you can look into. One's called a land trust. where it has some protection over like a due on sale clause for a mortgage company. And the other, put a trust in place with the sellers, or call it the address or something like that, so they don't see like Robert Peterson on title and a mortgage with someone else's name. In some cases, you could be a little creative on the mortgage company not necessarily catching that title was changed, but in theory, it's like one of those things, maybe you're doing it for a couple of years, or maybe it goes on forever. But, the idea maybe is that rates come down in the future and you can do a traditional refinance, otherwise just kind of sticking with the seller's mortgage and keeping it on that one.
When you go under, or do you have a plan, you have to build that?
Yeah, I gotta look in more into the land trust. I was hearing that, there are some ways that they can't initiate like the due on sale clause with like a land trust. But, plan B is like, there's a little bit of equity in some of these deals, and you're getting the principal pay down, and if you're walking in the property with little money down, then, there's always gonna be risk, like taking over any side of the rental property. Self-directed IRAs to acquire properties is kind of what I was saying. I used a company called Horizon Trust. I know Tomas and John got set up recently. Essentially, like, they're pretty cool. My dad actually, was a city planner and had a retirement account and rolled some money into a self-directed about 15 years ago or something like that. So that's kind of the first time I started to hear about it a little bit. And he bought a couple of properties in this account, rental properties. So you can acquire properties. If you guys have a retirement account of some sort, called a 401k, a past company, whatever, you can roll it over to a self-directed IRA, and then you can have more access and flexibility of what you purchase with that money. So John and Tomas recently bought a flip it, right? They're gonna flip a property, or it was in Pollock Pines, it could have been a perfect like short-term rental or long-term rental or something like that. So you have the ability to flip properties in there where, again, you can partner with other people and utilize other funds. In some cases, you can use that self-directed money to with a loan on it as well. So you can like use the down payment from your self-directed and get a loan. It's called a non-recourse loan, technical term here, but there's some options to acquire properties where you only have like 40, 50 grand in this IRA, you can get another loan to help with it. And the reason why, it's called a non-recourse loan. You can't get a traditional loan on an IRA because your IRA doesn't make any money, right? So a traditional lender, no lender would lend me money, right? They lend Bobby money, but my IRA doesn't have any, income and things like that, and credit scores, right? So they have to do a non-recourse loan, which may be called a private hard money loan, where they're joining their funds, where they're underwriting the deal based on property. So anyways, self-directed can be cool. You can buy crypto with it. Some people are that. I haven't recently. You could do other business ventures. So you can have your retirement funds in this account, and you could literally create like a marketing company or something like that, or you could have a vending machine company. Right, I don't know, whatever little car washing companies like. It's so like flexible on the options. And again, the company that I use was Horizon Trust. I watched a couple podcasts or listened to a couple podcasts that really sold me on it as a way to be able to maneuver within a retirement account. Because for me, right, I don't know or fully understand the stock market. I put money in like an S&P 500, which has been doing well lately. I have zero clue how, because the economy feels like it's teetering in about the fall. But somehow, the S&P 500 has been doing well the last couple of years. Well, historically, they're 7 or 8%, right? But I believe that I can find investment opportunities that would exceed maybe what one of those retirement accounts could accomplish. So that's why I like the self-directed IRAs. Any questions on those?
Yes. So if you have an IRA, just a typical, someone's W-2 and they have an IRA. But what I'm hearing is you could take this IRA and put it, somehow leverage it into,
You roll it into a self-directed account, so most commonly.
and there's no tax issues when you do that?
No,
Okay. And so, and then you could purchase, because you're leveraging that money.
yeah, so there's a number of different things, like John Smots, like we talked about, like they could lend me money. Or they could lend Brian money, right? So if you had 200,000, this retirement got 100,000, whatever. They could lend me money at 10%, and I could pay them in their IRA account $2,000 if they give you 200 grand. I could pay them that money every month, right? That's one way you can do it. Or yes, you could just purchase a buy and hold property and keep it in there. You do a short-term rental, right? Who knows if you want to do vacation there? And then, or you could do a flip. Right, so it's cool because there's a lot of different ways you can, manipulate the account and be able to be maybe a little more hands-on involved with where your retirement dollars go.
Wow, we
Yeah.
never knew that. That's good information.
Yeah, and let me, Bobby, if I can just,
Yeah.
John and I just recently did, and it's great because, we put our marbles together, so it's rounded up a few pennies. And the nice thing about that is, since it's our money that came from a retirement account, there's no, you don't pay any taxes on it. And, so we're not paying ourselves any interest either. So as we're flipping this property, we don't have, there's no interest, there's no mortgage, there's nothing, because we own it free and clear, because they came out of retirement funds. All the expenses are paid from the retirement account. And when we flip it and make money off of it, all the proceeds go back into the account as well. So that account keeps growing, and you just keep going forward. But one of the nice things about it is that I look at it as we don't have any expenses, because it's not coming out of my personal account.
Yeah.
It's coming out of a whole separate account.
The money that you made from the flip, do you have to pay taxes on that, or does that?
No, so the money that we make from the flip goes right back. It
Into
goes
your
right back into the IRA.
You can't touch it,
You cannot touch it.
but you can leverage it to buy another one.
Exactly. And then eventually, so right now, what we're doing is we're building, this is another arm of us building our retirement. Right? And when we get to the age of
Yeah.
59 and a half, then we can start tapping into it with no tax consequences. But in the meantime, you're just building and building and building, and we're able to have more control over our
Wow.
investment.
I've
So
never,
basically, you're borrowing stuff for your 401k.
No.
But you're not.
not borrowing, because there's no in that.
So you're
You're
gonna pay it
leveraging,
back?
you're leveraging it.
They transfer
It goes back,
Yeah, with the interest,
yeah, well, with the profit in this
with the
case.
profit.
Yes. So we can't tap in, I can't say, oh, I'm gonna take myself to lunch, or, although there's some guidelines, there's some restrictions.
And wrong case, my
And well, you don't want to, it'd be no different if I tapped in my 401k, so I'm going
What if
away.
you had like an Airbnb in the self-directed?
So there's always loopholes, right?
Yeah.
But the flexibility you have is awesome, but the great thing is like, yeah, all of a sudden we have this cash that we didn't have access to before with no interest to ourselves. Okay, so the profit, how we get compensated is it goes back into the profit, goes right back.
And you have a timeline, you have to consider that.
No. No,
There's multiple people.
There's pros and cons, but for the sake of time.
They just,
Uh,
they have
yeah.
separate accounts.
We actually have it till 2/12/30. That's how we listen.
But it's a long conversation,
Oh.
there's so much.
I think you could, we had somebody here like 3 or 4 years ago with a self-directed company from Polycom, which is one, and then we're both with Horizon Trust, like they could have represented. It is a really interesting, it can be a little complex, but again, like you can use it for all this seller finance or sub two stuff, right? You could, if you only have 10 grand in your self-directed account, or 20 or 30 or 40, whatever, right? You can have small amounts and you can figure out how to complement it with other strategies, or you could partner with somebody. So it is rolling money over from either a SEP, 401k, or you can start one. And it's rolled over to a self-directed account. You don't pay back the 401k. The self-directed is the new account.
How much are you allowed to start with?
Well, I think it's the same guidelines as like a SEP, like what's a SEP stand?
so,
Self-employed, yeah. So I think, I don't know, you can put 6,000, and I think it's based on your income sometimes, maybe it's 20% of your income or something. Yeah, so it's, yeah, in the rollover, yeah, if you have whatever, you roll it into this. And you can, there's self-directed accounts that you can still link it with the S&P 500 or another mutual fund, right? So when they finish their project, I have some money out right now that I lent to somebody. You could, if the money's sitting idle, you put it back on like a mutual fund or something, right? And what I've kind of offered is sometimes, like I borrow money on my flips, and again, bridge money, where I've lent money out, I lent somebody, because there's a down payment on properties, right? And it's less secure, but maybe I know this person well, I lent my money out at like 20% return, right? Because it was a little risky, but I understood that this is a safe deal, so I know that I'm gonna get my money back. Sometimes you can find flippers or investors or whatever, but again, we know real estate, I know real estate a lot better than I do the stock market. So that's what I've liked with these accounts, and that we've kind of brainstormed different ways to make some money on it. It would be probably a good topic to have a future expert on it, 'cause there's a lot of stuff, that we don't fully know. Any other questions on that? And they have two separate accounts. They don't have one account together. When they bought a property, it was Tomas, Ira, and then it was Lansing, Ira, whatever. It was not, they don't have an account together, but you can do it with your spouse. Like my wife and I, or my dad, right? Like same thing, like, well, your spouse can have a joint account, but you can, partner, you can do that with anybody, right? You and I can go buy a property and join forces with our Ira. Any other questions on it? Wrapping this up, but traditional investing in a method, 20-25% down. Properties are often occupied. This is kind of going into the BRRRR method and why that's kind of beneficial. I'll just give you an idea, like a typical BRRRR deal, which basically means that you're buying a property that is distressed, you're rehabbing it, you're fixing it up, and then bringing it back out. So again, like being able to structure and borrow money in different ways. So when I buy a property, I usually use a hard money loan. And oftentimes the lender will require 10% down, and they'll give you 100% of the rehab costs, right? At times, I borrowed the money for the down payment from someone else. Again, like, if I wanted to borrow money from them on their IRA, I can use that money for the down payment for this hard money loan. So you can walk into these properties with zero money down, and the hard money lender will give you the rehab funds. So, and the first strategy is you buy it, you rehab it, you then refinance and rent it out. So rough kind of numbers here of how I've acquired a lot of the properties that I own. In this scenario, your initial loan was 360, you borrowed 70 for the rehab. In a lot of cases, I've even borrowed that 10% down. So, you would need $50,000 cash to close, or you could borrow from someone's IRA. And this is one of those things, like, how many people do we know that has these retirement accounts? It's way easier to ask to borrow money sometimes when it's in this invisible account that you can't touch. It's harder for me to lend out 50,000 in my pocket than it is like, oh, I got a retirement account, sure, like, let's lend it out at X return. So, just side by side, a traditional scenario where, so here, so traditional scenario, right? Maybe you put like 100,000 out of pocket, you have standard write-offs. Tenants like they're paying market value. If you find something distressed, you can put less money down, you can refinance it, you'll have money when you're improving a property, right? I mentioned that cost segregation analysis. You're borrowing that 70,000 in that last scenario from the lender, right? And you can write that money off. When you improve a property, you have all those potential write-offs to do the bonus depreciation. So again, if you do a traditional property, you buy it at 500,000 and you put 150,000, you don't have all those potential write-offs. If you buy something at 400 or 350 and you borrow the money to rehab it and you improve that property, you can, then it makes more sense to do that cost segregation analysis, and you'll have big write-offs to offset your income. You're gonna get market value rents, you're not gonna have the plumbing and electrical issues, stuff like that, sweat equity of an updated property, and ultimately you have less money down, sometimes none if you, bought it at the right price per se. Any questions on that? This is kind of the loan kind of broken down. Usually your interest rates can be 9 to 10% on a hard money loan. You do pay points to a hard money lender. But you gotta, there's obviously more to sweat equity, right? When we're working on these properties, you gotta manage to pay a rehab. It's kind of how the lender determines your loan to value. It's usually gotta be 75% of the after repair value. But again, maybe you can borrow that money the down payment money, so it's not as, much taken out of your pocket. Hard money loans, you can close like 14 days usually. Just some resources, Bigger Pockets was a big one that I followed. I mentioned Pace Morby, definitely go look at him if you're, a question on creative financing. Books to read, David Green's actually with Keller Williams, he's the host of Bigger Pockets, he's in, Brentwood or something like that. Yeah, and he wrote a couple books, one run all the time for long-term investment. Local meetups, I host a meetup. You guys follow me on social media. We usually do it at Crawdads. We've been bumping up the Roosters on the river, but right over there next to Crawdads and Chevy's. We're gonna have these guys presenting on subject to financing. They have like hundreds of these sub-2 properties. And they're gonna talk about some creative ways to purchase them or find them or different things like that. So they're gonna be based in the Bay Area. They do stuff in all over the West Coast. Fair stuff with others in the industry, create partnerships. But yeah, definitely love to see you guys out at one of my meetups or ask me questions. I'm here, and I think I got some. I'll speak from that. Info on if you guys want to follow some of the projects or questions or stuff like that. Be active on Instagram. Thanks for coming out, guys. I did bring some pizza for you guys. I'm always buying property, so keep me in mind if you guys have any distressed deals. And if you have any questions, I'll be hanging out.
This was amazing. Is there any questions? I don't. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We definitely will. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Enjoy your pizza, you guys.
Can be used or out of state as well.
Self-directed? Yeah, I think in different countries, probably.
Out of state money.
Alright, yeah, no, yeah, for sure, out of state, yeah, no problem there. Yeah, I think maybe it's, yeah, lots of creative ways. Yeah. Yeah,
How are you?